We are checking out Effectrix2 by Sugarbytes, specifically looking at its effects and parameters. This video we're going to start with Tonalizer. Sort of like the Spectrum, this is another multiple delay plugin, but this time they're turned into pitch musical notes. The first parameter is note, and this lets us define what key things are going to be tuned to. This can be in chromatic mode, or free mode if you want to set the pitch to something exact in hertz. The spread parameter creates a chord or harmonizing notes related to the chosen interval or chords selected from this drop-down menu here. You can see if I turn this all the way down, we're just getting one single note. But if I choose a minor chord and then turn the spread up, we're now spreading out the delays at different pitches, creating a minor chord. Let's just have a listen at 100% wet so we can really hear how tonal this loop has become. Make sure you play with the different options for the harmonization. It doesn't always have to sound all fluffy and nice. The feedback determines how long the delays last for, so it effectively gives you a decay or a release style parameter. If we find the feedback parameter is a little bit too much, we can actually choose inverse, so this flips the phasing 180 before it gets feedback into itself and creates a bit more of a softer sound. But I'm going to keep it on normal. The stereo dial controls the stereo width of the signal, and we can choose between classic and chord pan. So chord pan pans the signal as defined by the spread. Input adjusts the volume which is fed into the delays, so you can turn this down if things are getting a bit out of hand. And finally we have a cutoff filter which you can add to taste. This is a handy parameter because the content produced by the previous parameters can be really rich, so this is a good way to kind of tone things down. So I'm going to shape my sound here by choosing a low pass filter, and I'm going to bring it down while just playing around with the resonance, finding a nice balance. If you want to use the filter more expressively, try playing with the comb filter, so this generates and adds a delayed version of the input signal. Next up is Crush. This is made to destroy whatever it gets its hands on, whether gently or brutally. It depends on your mood, I guess. So Crush gives us access to a bit crusher, a sample rate reducer, and a distortion effect. The first parameter is Drive. This adds a classic first-class Sugarbytes distortion to your signal. No more explanation necessary. The low, mid, and high dials boost or reduce frequencies, so you can shape this to your taste. The bit dial reduces the bit depth of the signal, so this creates a nice digital reduction effect. We can change its behavior. At the moment we're on normal, but we could choose high, where quiet signals are more affected. Low, where louder signals are more affected. Clip, where the signal gets attenuated before getting crushed. And progressive, which doesn't actually bit crush the signal, but reduces the bit depth of the difference between single samples. The sample rate determines the rate at which samples are captured and held, so this is great for getting that super lo-fi sound. We can also choose between normal, which we're currently listening to, dynamic, where the reduction depends on the level of the input, absurd, where the sample will fail to 0, so that makes things very unnatural, and smooth, where the samples will get interpolated into the next ones, and that makes things sound just a little more kind. Moving on to the filter. So if you're familiar with other Sugar Bytes products, you're probably aware that we have a wide selection of beautifully designed options to choose from here. And as well as the range of regular filters such as high pass, band pass, low pass, comb, and Moog modeled, we have a super fun area where we can play with vowel or formant filters that are designed to emulate the sound of a human voice box. The mix style lets us mix between the traditional filters and the vowel filters, so let's throw this all the way to the right so we can play with the vowel sounds. We can choose two different vowel shapes using the vowel A and B dials, so each increment has a different vowel or combination of vowels with a resonance control to really kind of emphasize it. There's also some options such as high pass to help reduce low frequency noise and low pass to reduce high frequency noise. There's a band pass which only lets through certain frequencies. It's worth noting that I think this is the most fun one to play with, just in my opinion. And there's a comb filter, so this adds a delayed version of the input signal to give it even more character. Now once we've selected our two vowel sounds, we can go ahead and crossfade between them with the vowel A-B dial. So make sure you get some modulation happening here to really make your audio talk. The final effect for this video is the phaser. So the phaser does some magic and it splits the audio into multiple poles, it messes with the phase of them and then puts them back together to create that classic phaser sound. The frequency dial controls the bass frequency, and this is where all the poles will base themselves around. This is by far the most expressive control out of the whole effect. The feedback controls the feedback for the delay, so when this is set to normal, this returns the signal back into the input, exaggerating the effect. We can use inverse mode, which does a 180-degree phase shift on the signal before it gets fed back into the system, and that just gives us a nice softer approach. The poles parameter determines how many poles are split out from the bass frequency. The more poles, the wilder things get. We have a classic LFO setup to automate the movement of the frequency, which includes amount, speed, and shape. And just make sure you check out the bode modes as they simulate an endless up or down movement of the LFO. It's pretty clever. The final parameter is stereo, and this controls the spread of the phaser across the stereo spectrum.